Welcome, everybody, to the August edition of North American Contenders Trials. We're starting off the week strong here today. We got a lot of games to get through this week. Only a few are going to be able to hit stream because all these teams got to play at the same time. We even got 2 streams going right now, so make sure you check out Elohel Esports down below the channel and support tier 2 on both your monitors. First up, though, we're going to have Revival versus Malibu. It's Possible alongside LaFawn bringing you this first match of this week of trials.
And this is one that we got to kind of get early on because Revival has to perform. Paul, we're expecting some big things from this squad. You know, they've had Contenders experience, and the question is now, can they make it out of trials yet again into Contenders proper this week? Opposite to them, Malibu, looking to play upset, looking to play spoiler. They are the underdog in this matchup, according to most. And so the performance this time around is going to be very interesting.
Well, and these two are very interesting to start us off with, right? Because we have the winners of Open Division versus what's essentially the quote-unquote losers of Contenders Actual, right? Malibu, they dominated last trials run that they had, but once they got to Contenders Actual North America, they didn't win a single map, neither against Slept On nor Comically Large Crosshair. So now they're coming back in. They obviously want to make Contenders again, but you need to be one of the top 2 teams in your group to do so.
And it's actually interesting that you bring up Comically Large Crosshair because they're fighting one of those spots to Comically Large Crosshair who are in trials themselves. So certainly not a lot of room for error in this early days of Contenders trials. And so again, you know, to highlight this, both these teams, they need a quick start. They need to be aggressive out the gate because they don't have a lot of room for error as evidenced by the teams that are kind of vying for that top spot here in trials. Paul, looking at this roster, standing out to me though, I mean, on Revival, it's going to be really interesting. Wub coming in to play. Genji was the name of the game in the last patch, perhaps not so much this one, but if Genji were to play, Wub is definitely an player to keep your eye on.
I'm just glad that Wub is in Overwatch again, man. I miss casting this guy, Genji or not, but I mean, you know, and Wub is not the only person on Revival who's worth noting, right? We could go literally person to person and tell you why this person deserves to be brought up, but we got to talk about Malibu too, because it's not like these guys are any slackers.
No, not at all. And I think one of the things that we have to step out right away is, again, the DPS squad, because looking at Buck, who is going to be playing alongside that flex DPS role, Buck's Genji is not one to scoff at either. So with the fact that you've got Wub versus Buck, that matchup is going to be one to keep your to really pay attention to. But I think right out of the gate, the most important one for Malibu to perform is the tank line, Cedro and Odd here, Paul, because for them, I think a quick start is they need to prove they can hang with the best of the best in Contenders trials.
And we're already getting out onto the first map, folks. It's Oasis today. To start us off, we have a set map pool. And reminder, Trials is now our first 2-3. No more 2-0s and quick matches. So you've got to go for the long haul here. Already, it seems that Revival are getting the better end of the positioning on the point, but the high ground is not given over to them entirely, and Buck actually whittles that one away, gets control of it, and now looking to collapse onto Revival, who are just toggling themselves in and off the objective, but they're not able to actually put a strong foot into the ground. Now Revival's going to try and run out, but Aspen just gets clobbered. Buck finding a beautiful pick there before he gets slept. Not quite done and dusted yet for Malibu, as they are losing members left and right.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the things that, surprisingly, it's actually a dive composition, I think, that requires more setup time than the sustain comp of the double shield, because you need your Zarya to get into position to actually be useful in the fight, and sometimes that means giving up that 20% mark to the point control. We are going to see the flip come in, and here in this next fight, you're going to actually see Wannabe switch over to the Torb, likely to counter out the flanking style of the Winston Tracer Genji. Just put pressure on them as they try to get to your back line. Keep an eye out there for, especially Aspire, if you can stay alive long through this fight.
If Wub can get around that Torbjorn or just straight through it, he's going to have that Dragon Blade at the ready sooner rather than later. Buck in the back, just getting Aspire out of the back, but Aspire has that Pulse Bomb too. Both DPS for Revival working with potential shutdowns. Buck going a little bit too far forward. Now the blade is out from Wub. He's immediately going to dumpster his competition and send the rest of his team packing.
Is he going to chase down Wannabe? He does. Aspire helps get out the kill there. And that was a relatively economical fight as well, despite the fact that 2 ultimates were committed from the team in white here. Liar and Wub comboing for the Nano Blade. Expectations in this next engagement, though, the Graviton Surge from Salty, trying to shut down Buck's Dragon Blade. In the trade there, it will always favor the team with the Zarya. So look for Salty to try and deny the play here from Buck.
Back, he could deny this push all by himself with a pulse bomb too. Does have to worry about that turret. The turret not ideally placed though. Aspire can just get rid of it. Now he is free reign in the backline, and Moopy setting him up beautifully. Even an immortality field is not enough for Malibu this time around. They're not even going to get to the objective as we tick up past 80%.
It's uncommon to actually get the Primal Rage to be the one fight winner there, but with how slowly Malibu was using that engage, Revival was able to survive long enough to bring value from Moopy. And now we're in last fight territory, and I mean, it's really all in Revival's favor. This Graviton Surge is going to be so disastrous unless it's denied.
You can just grab to keep him off the point if you really want. And that's exactly what Salty does. Keeps him in that tiny room. Buck will be in the back, and he'll get both supports, actually. So if Malibu can weather this storm, this is still a winnable fight. And yes, that is what has occurred. Just barely, they'll be able to get back on the objective and keep this first round alive.
That fight was absolutely disastrous for Revival, Paul. Honestly, a poor engagement, in my opinion, from that Graviton Surge from Salty. Not only does it not guarantee a kill, it does not deny the Dragon Blade, and on top of that, with all the ultimates that were committed, you're going to come back in. This Gravitic Flux and the Baptiste ult here from Malibu should quite easily sustain through this next fight. There's the early Flux.
It only catches Salty, who should be just fine. Dive comes in too. Malibu trying to play forward and aggressive, but they need to actually isolate somebody. And Revival has done a good job of sticking together. Now Wup has the Dragon Blade online. He's going to go in with the Nano. He's got his eyes zoned on the supports. An Immortality Field and a stun to lay him and deny him value off the Blade. You got to try and collapse onto Ultraviolet right now if you are Revival. A good pick on the Buck. That'll work too. Now the supports are more so vulnerable in the back. And one by one, Revival will demolish and remove Malibu from the objective. Good effort from them. They made this first round closer than it probably had a right to be based on a 99 to 19%. But now it's Revival taking away Gardens of Oasis. They just got to deal with a few stragglers, and nothing's really online. Buck's kind of close to the Blade, but he's closer to dying here. So unless he's able to miracle sustain, there's not much hope here for Malibu.
Yeah, we're going to see the long distance. I mean, if Movie goes down here, there's an opportunity. But Wub takes it out, and that will be the end of the map. And honestly, the difference in that fight was both Flex Tank ultimates not finding value. Salty's Grav was not ideal, and then obviously the Gravitic Flux needs to catch more than just the Zarya. Or if you get the Zarya, you need to confirm the kill. Neither happens, and so back and forth it goes. Round number 1, yes, the numbers were close, but the round wasn't. And Revival put themselves firmly in the lead, in my opinion. And heading into map number 2, I need to see an adaptation from Malibu if they want a chance back in this map.
Want to be hovering over an adaptation already. The Ashe coming out, much more focused on that team play, less on the picks, less on the 1v1 against Aspire. But Aspire might be picking that gunslinger himself.
Much closer map here, right? So the double shield allows you to zone off a lot easier. And so we're going to see a mirror composition in this regard. I would expect Wub and Buck to both switch. One to Genji, one to Doom. Interesting. Buck on one of his signature heroes, in fact.
This is much more of a clutch hero, but it's also more of a Hail Mary. You need to get that opening pick if you are Buck right now. Otherwise, Wub's going to be better in the extended fight. And oh, it's Aspire with the opening pick instead. Malibu just stuck in the room on the side of the objective, not able to get out and do much of anything. Systematically destroyed they will be, and the first cap will go over to Revival.
Yeah, they are going to get one consolation pickoff in Wub, but it's not going to matter. And I mean, that's the Doomfist difference at that point in time, right? If you don't get that punch, if you don't get that combo, then you are essentially a 5v6. Buck is unable to enter at any point in that fight. And as a result, you can see he was so ineffective in that first fight. He's going to switch out to Genji himself. The only difference is he's going to be significantly behind Wub now in terms of value. And so there's going to be an amplification matrix early to dissuade the push.
Good shielding coming in from Odd, and he'll soak up a lot of that damage with his kinetic grasp too. So Malibu are still able to work toward the positioning that they were looking for. Unfortunately, doesn't seem like they were all thinking about the same position there. Wraparound from Revival, claims 2 kills, and that's the fight done and dusted.
And I mean, the big problem there too, if you're Malibu, is that yes, it took a long time to get that fight ended, but you don't actually either build nor deny anything. Just the amplification matrix from Lyre, and so now, I mean, you're walking to this second to last fight with basically nothing. An early amplification matrix, and Revival's just gonna walk away. It doesn't bother them whatsoever.
Yeah, no, they just retreat to the point. It gets Malibu a bit of position. They can actually touch their toes onto the objective and look to use the Gravitic Flux. A good halt 2, sets it up from Cedro. Go with an Immortality Field. What's going to actually clean up the damage? It looks like not much of anything, as it's just Malibu getting cleaned up themselves. Ultraviolet gets a bit of a morale kill at the end there, but the fact of the matter is it's still last fight territory for Malibu.
The only real condition here, if you're Malibu, that you can kind of win out, is if Cedro goes clutch with this supercharger, like builds it really quickly, and then you get combo into it, you survive with a rally, and then you get the Dragon Blade into the supercharger. That's basically the only win condition they have, and it's a very, very small chance.
Already the rally coming out. It'll be answered by Aspen. Wub's got the blade. Not able to do a whole ton with it, realistically speaking. Gets some good damage down, and at least the Bob will be finished off. Aspire not close to his own, though. It's just the amplification matrix that Revival are working with, but it seems to be more than enough. Buck will get shut down in his Dragon Blade, and that was the last real chance that Malibu had to actually take this. They're going to throw out an amplification matrix now, but Revival are not going to step out and give it the angle it needs. Now Bob will go down under the objective. Aspire's worked up to that one, and it's going to zone a good bit of Malibu off the point. Malibu, though, they're making this tricky for Revival, all things considered. There's a Gravitic Flux, though. This should be the cleanup. Immortality Field force. Members of Malibu, low. And that should be map 1 going 2-0 over to Revival. They just got to get rid of Cedro, and I believe Wannabe. Bob goes too long over the point. And finally, after a very long last fight, Revival will take the first map.
Yeah, that's, I mean, exactly as expected, right? That last fight, when you don't come in with any resources and it takes you too long to build it. There was potential for a clutch there from Malibu, but unfortunately for them, taking too long to get there, and so as a result, they're going to end up with 100-0, a round much more indicative, I think, of the playstyle difference between Revival and Malibu here in game number 1 of Contenders Trials NA.
Well, and I want to talk about Wub, just because I love talking about Wub, man. This is actually not quite the Genji nerf patch. I believe we are on 1.50, whereas the Genji nerf is 1.50.1, if I said that correctly. Basically, we're one patch before Genji gets hit like a ton of bricks, right? So seeing Wub come out on that Genji, it just fills me with such beautiful nostalgia.
It's, you know, one of the legacy Genji players here in NA, in the sense that he's been known for that character for a very long time. I think more interestingly, though, is that we didn't see nearly as much aggressive Genji play from the reverse, from Malibu, because Buck is a well-known Genji player in his own right. This is not, you know, it's not something that he's would be surprised if he picked it. And so the fact that Malibu chose not to play around that kind of mirror playstyle is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm being told by production I did in fact say that right. So quick pat on the back for me, but a pat on the back too for Revival. They're going to start off this series right. We're going to go to Junkertown now, LaFawn. What are the adaptations that you would like to see from Malibu to make this second map a bit more competitive?
That's a good question. And I think one of the bigger things there is that let's take a look at round number 2 from Oasis and kind of get inspiration from there. Because I think round number 1 on Oasis was more of Revival kind of giving up space that they didn't need to, more than sort of Malibu stepping up to the plate. I think one of the issues we saw there is sort of the engaged space that Malibu is taking, right? That amplification matrix, I think, is the greatest indication of that sort of situation. If you look at what Malibu's doing, they're taking fights very, very early, unnecessarily early, and as a result, it just allows Revival to kind of retreat and just waste those resources that are being put into an engagement that never really was meant to be taken. So I think for Malibu, identifying the space at which they can work is going to be very key, and at least here, finding space into the back line to set up Buck for success, trying to get into that Dragon Blade a lot faster.
And interestingly enough, Malibu not opting for any hit scan this time around. Buck's going to go onto that Sombra, and just look to apply pressure on the back line. Hopefully gonna go over, find Aspire, look for the one clip, mostly whiffs that one. And now Wannabe, he's like, all right, well, if I didn't get the one clip there, I'll look for the headshot here. Can't quite find it to open it up.
Yeah, that's a really unfortunate first fight there, or first take from Wannabe.
Now we have a bit of a brawl over in the alley. Revival holding on to this strongly, but a lot of damage being taken by Salty. He's getting pocketed, but that leaves the other side of the map open for Wannabe. He can now pick a lot of different angles. Oh, a little bit more charge on that headshot, and Aspire would be in the grave. Wannabe really trying to take out the enemy Widowmaker, but not given the proper angle. Aspire playing with good discipline around that box right now, and while Wannabe is distracted, it doesn't really seem like much progress is going over to Malibu.
No, in fact, the first fight, it's just a 5v6 the whole time, so while Wannabe, yes, was just putting pressure online, it doesn't matter because that fight never really went in anyone's favor. Now, Salty and Liar are both at their ultimates here, and that's well ahead of what is going to be on, brought to bear from the offense. And Revival are in pretty good position with the space that they've got, and especially with a cart here beyond the choke, so they can play up aggressively and deny the entry to Malibu. Revival has every advantage in terms of converting on these kills. The high ground rotation from Malibu, but they're taking so long to get into position.
Very long rotation around the side means that they don't have to worry so much about a collapse, and they can throw out that amplification matrix, but they're all grouped up for the gravitic flux. Immortality field is going to stop that one. But now Malibu, rather, they just have to play back and go for another rotation, wait for their immortality field, so they're playing with equal resources. They're going to throw out Rally. It will be mirrored as they charge onto the objective, but they don't have any real control right now. Gravitic Flux only hits Salty. That won't even get the amplification matrix out, and I think Odd actually got stunned. There's a Blade 2. Cleans up Malibu. And only 1:45 remaining now for the attacking.
And I mean, this is the one fight now where Malibu has basically their win conditions set. They have the Dragon Blade combo into the Supercharger, right? And there's no Rally online, there's no armor to defend against it. So this Immortality field is the only thing standing between this Genji and Disaster. And it's going to be up to Buck here in Cedro to be able to close out this fight, because if they lose it, that's Revival likely completing the full hold.
Oh, Malibu not waiting for that Infrasight to run out either. They're going straight on forward with the Supercharged Blade. Good first pick and a second to follow. Buck will finally break the lines of Revival. It took a good bit of time, only a minute remaining, and there's still some contestation on the cart, but Malibu should be able to walk this home and get that first checkpoint.
And that fight was one shield bash away from falling apart, so credit to Buck for dodging Aspen's break there and getting the 3K into the point completion. Still, though, not a lot of time left in the time bank. Only 3 minutes remaining, and with an early hold here, I mean, Revival, if they can get this first pick off, they can deny Wannabe's flank. As he's Wannabe around the map,
going for the long flank.
There's no way they know where he is. They actually do not know where he is.
No, they can't possibly. He has all the time in the world to set up whatever headshot he feels like here. Look at that trigger discipline, too. Just refusing to go for any shot that he knows won't end up in a pick. Oh, he thought about it onto Wub there. Getting Liar, doesn't quite get it. This is taking so long. Now the fight's happening on the cart. Wannabe doesn't have any good angles, and he's going to get spotted too. Buck's going to go down. Wannabe will join him. That flank was ambitious, and it was fun to watch for a bit, but now with the Gravitic Flux coming out and everything, it's hard to imagine that Malibu are able to turn this fight around.
Yeah, at a certain point, the flank becomes less of a flank and just a 5v6 for your team, right? So that's exactly what happens. Wannabe is not in a position to really do anything. He doesn't go for the shot. I think at a certain point, cut your losses, just go for the play and hope it works out. It does. I mean, he never does, and so it's a 5v6. Now it's going to be a switch for Wannabe as he goes over to the Ash. So we're seeing the classic double shield poke composition that we've been used to seeing for quite some time, Paul. And I mean, Wannabe, he needs to play behind shields because Aspire definitely has the advantage in a long-range battle against the Ash with no pocket.
Oh, but Wannabe will be able to apply more pressure to the enemy team, to the enemy tanks, especially with that Dynamite, as long as you can get it past the double shield. Buck's got the Blade 2. Could look for a rally. There it is, coming in from Fishcake. Gives a little bit of armor, so Buck can go into the back line. Can't quite find the push he picks up onto the high ground, though. Immortality Field stops him in his tracks, and although Loopy goes down on the cart, it's still a fight being taken by Revival. Oh, Lyra shut down Buck, but it's a little bit too late for that. It's expensive from Malibu, but they'll be able to get this second point.
That's, you know, I mean, it wasn't that bad of a fight for them. They used the Blade and Rally, right? That's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if anything, that was weirdly more expensive for Revival, as they use the, well, they're knocking out the Dragon Blade here, and they're going to have no Amplification Matrix either. So this first part of this half third is actually going to be all Revival here, as they can put all the pressure online, and there's nothing really on Revival's end to stop them. Short of, you know, Aspire popping off and clicking ahead, or Wub getting a combo, rather. And at least with the passive positioning here from Revival, that's not going to happen, so.
Well, I like Aspire's angle right there. He actually had a cute little angle that denied the high ground that Wannabe wanted to set up on. So you just got to play down on the ground. But like you said, this is such a passive position. You're not contesting a cart right now. If you're Revival, you're just waiting out the Amplification Matrix from Ultraviolet. Now the Gravitic Flux going forward too. Aspire trying to take this 1v1 against Buck. What a nasty headshot. Too bad the rest of Revival's not feeling too hot. Aspire will pull out the rally so that some kind of contest can come down. But this payload has gotten so far for this to be the first fight on point C. Aspire, you need to go around and get some headshots now, and it seems like it's just too little, too late. Aspire getting zoned out by Wannabe. And although Malibu struggled with the first two objectives pretty heavily, they're going to roll in and complete the map with still a minute 15 in the bank.
And I mean, that was a very interesting defense. I think that's an incorrect term to use on second and third. That did not happen from a Revival, but Malibu's still in this. I mean, after point A, I was kind of worried that they wouldn't get any further into the map, but the one combo from the Dragon Blade into the Supercharger kind of allowed them to snowball through, right? It was a very efficient use of their resources, and despite Wannabe, you know, taking that one ill-advised, I think, flank, the rest of the team was there. Rest of Malibu were there to kind of support his playstyle, and it felt like Revival didn't really respect the push that Malibu was bringing to bear, right? They kind of just said, oh, okay, we'll dump everything to this fight that they probably were never going to win, and as a result of third, they just never got into a place where they could generate those resources to deny. Overwatch is still a very ult-heavy game, and if you don't show respect to the ultimates that are online for the opposing team, it's going to come back to haunt you. It does just that for Revival there on points 2 and 3.
And I want to give Wannabe credit, because I know that flank didn't work out, LaFawn. But think about how sick it would have been if it did work out and he finds a headshot there.
That's the difference between you and me.
That's the kind of highlight reel-worthy stuff I'd be going for, you know?
For every
Ultraviolet?
For every LA Gladiators flank, there's a...
Yeah, for every great bamboozle, there is just a great big flub. Hopefully Malibu aren't going to flub their defense, because they still need to put this map on the board if they want to tie our series up. Reminder, Trials is now first 2-3 again, so we still got a long way to go before either of these teams claims victory.
Certainly do. And I mean, a very passive defensive hold here for Malibu, as expected. No, barely anyone takes a fight early on this part of Junkertown. So we're going to get to that first choke, that first natural choke on this first point. Spire goes to the top, not going to find anything. And Paul, I mean, here, you see how passively they're looking for it. They're looking to get the shielded position and try and work around that.
Ooh, what a nice headshot there from Aspire. Zedro gets chunked, and now Aspire doesn't even have to go back and find the pick onto Wannabe. You can just slow walk through main if you are Revival right now, because you just have the shield advantage. I mean, Wub will get taken down. That's not ideal, and with Aspire getting pressured out, actually, this is still winnable for Malibu right now. These shields only last so long if you're Moopy and Salty, and not long enough, it appears. Revival have to go for a soft reset.
And I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a problem now, because oh man, this is Buck just going on a tear point.
That was nasty from Buck, and now he's got the blade to finish this one off, polish the fight, and clean her on up. Easy peasy, easy pickings for Buck on the Genji.
There's the Buck on the Genji that we all know and we expected to see. And Wannabe comes back onto Aspire as well, so the Widowmaker back in control. And I mean, here's now a real issue actually for Revival. They're running out of space. Salty's been picked very early both times, so he doesn't have his Flux online. And I mean, again, this is going to come down to a time-wasting fight from Malibu. Their goal here is to win the fight out while drawing as much resources away from the offense as possible. And if that, if they can survive this Dragon Blade, things will be looking good for them.
Oh, Seadra going down early doesn't necessarily bode well for them surviving the Dragon Blade. Gravitic Flux being used by Odd to try and stall the push coming out. Wub still got a blade at the ready, though, and now he's going to pull it on out as the fight is late. There's no resources left for Malibu. He'll help his team clean that one up and look to the end of point A.
That's I don't necessarily agree with that the Gravitic Flux being used that early from Odd. In this time where teams are comboing the Supercharger and the Dragon Blade, as I think you need something to kind of deny that combo, and it doesn't happen. I don't know if there's a contest available here on first. They're not even going to go for it, yeah. So point will unlock. About even time banks though, Paul, because Revival got stalled out quite a bit. And still speaking of, well, I was going to say Malibu had the advantage, but with Wub picking up Buck, you're looking at this and saying this is probably the offensive taking this first push.
A split push, though, coming in from Revival, and Aspen is just going to get walked upon. Immortality Field had to be used there to keep Aspen alive, so now you don't have that if you are Revival. You do have a nice pick, though, and a Gravitic Flux to boot, so you're not too worried there. It's a little bit more expensive than it maybe had to have been for Revival, but a fight win's a fight win.
Indeed. I mean, you forced Wannabe off Widowmaker as well to the Ash, so you don't have that instant pink potential online. Obviously, we do know the pressure that Dynamite brings and how quickly Bob can generate too. But I mean, in this next fight, it's all about can Malibu get out onto the high ground that is currently being held by Revival. Yes, they're going to have the resources to fight if they ever get into a true engagement, but they're walking to the amplification matrix. Oh boy!
Ooh, oh, and that's just dirty from Revival there. I mean, the Supercharger got thrown down from Seadra, but it was not ideally timed there. Not so much a contest as a slaughter. And Malibu are going to give up point B. Revival going to have 4 minutes into time bank.
Yeah, and I mean, if they can get pickoffs here, oh, Wannabe so risky. Shooting there up against Wub's deflect, but I mean, here again, this is now a little bit of a problem because Dragon Blade does not synchronize well with the amplification matrix. And you would have liked that Supercharger to get the instant kill combo on the defense, but here's the Blade and the Dragon Blade, or sorry, the Supercharger.
Oh, and that's one swipe, 3 kills for Wub. He'll get shut down by a melee in the back, but the damage is already done. The fight is squared away, and that payload's not going to stop anytime soon.
And I mean, the whole time is that you're starting to move the cart forward. You haven't really spent any time contesting. And how are you going to defend? How are you going to defend Buck against this Dragon Blade? 'Cause that's looking more and more unlikely as time goes on. Genji, a very squishy hero in the middle of his ultimate. And you need to protect him as he goes through.
Gravitic Flux behind the amplification matrix thrown out by Ultraviolet, but nobody's there to follow up on that because the amplification matrix was keeping Revival away. So kind of a wasted ult there from Salty. Now it's going to be countered too with the Dragon Blade coming out. Immortality Field goes down and Buck is going to just blow Revival away there. There's only so many times I could come up with new words for how dominant these Dragon Blades are, LaFont.
It's kind of interesting at how Genjis are avoiding the shield bash of the Brig, because realistically, the combo that comes into play here is your Brig and your Baptiste play a little bit separately from each other. So the Immortality Field goes down, and then the Brig is able to kite away the Genji Blade with a stun plus the whip shot. That's not happening here as they're playing together, right next to each other, in fact. So you are able to dodge both the shield bash and the Immortality Field at the same time. Keep an eye on that as time goes on, because that'll be, if the Dragon Blades get denied, it's going to be off the back of that play.
Lot available, though, for the defense. Rally not going to be available now. Fish Cake getting sent back to spawn. It's a quick respawn, though. So Malibu, they can just back up, give a little bit of space on the cart, and Fish Cake will be back sooner rather than later, but you don't have a lot of space to play with. Bob will go forward. It goes a little bit long on the cart there, but into Revival's backline, so you got to focus that if you're Revival. They'll get rid of it, and now look to push forward onto the cart with a rally of their own, but that'll expire from Aspen. Wub getting caught by the stun. Immortality Field has to be used, and now Wub needs to go for the clutch. He needs to cleave through Malibu, but it's Buck with the blade who finds all the value, and Revival can no longer beat the time of Malibu.
That's Supercharger combo. I mean, especially if you dodge the stun, there's not really anything they can defend against it. And Wub, yes, he sees the shield bashes down, but he does not have the instant kill potential, and the healing is just too great coupled with the immortality field. So Buck with so much more room to work. And I mean, now you're looking at Revival, and if we're considering them not even being able to complete the map, they only will have the Bob here in this early part of the next fight and no Wub.
Oh.
That's the reset right there.
Well, I mean, at least you just wait in that room, right? But the Dynamites are going to go out. Wannabe will get denied to that little bit of ult charge, but already nearly back at a Bob. And shots like those with the halts, with the more Dynamite going to be up here in 2 seconds, right? This is looking like curtains for Revival.
Walking out, they're looking for that first fight, and they need that first pickoff. They need something. They need to get the cart. 20
But look how
seconds.
slow Revival are playing this, man. Their shields just cannot withstand this kind of pace, this kind of damage coming in. Revival gonna walk over, try and claim the high ground with the amplification matrix coming out. And Malibu will see that, but they don't really need that high ground. Wannabe's gonna go behind. He's got the bomb. He's just gonna throw it into the back line. This is gonna be nasty. Nobody's there ready for that bomb. Supercharger is out, so Revival have a chance to focus down some targets. Wannabe and the big Omnic Butler will be hitting the floor. Amplification Matrix now out, halted forward. Good work from Moopy to deny a bit of value, but he'll walk a bit too forward himself and get taken down as a result. Could he even fight here on the cart, but Respawn will always favor the defense. So you've got to clean this up quick. A Gravitic Flux going to help that one out. The map's not quite over. Buck needs to get something with this blade to stop Revival from capping, and that will just be neutralized entirely. Wannabe's back though. He's got the Doomfist. Gravitic Flux come in too. Malibu still want to claim this map. They want to tie our series up, and it's feeling more and more like they're gonna be able to do so, but Revival also putting on such a fight here, LaFon.
This is back and forth, and oh no, just a tank on the point, just Moopy coming back. That's gonna be it, actually, as the respawns are in. No catch really available.
Liar's there. Moopy stalled enough time to let Liar come onto the cart, and now Wub's got the blade. He'll take out one. You need so much more than that, though, Wub. At least he'll take out Buck, but it's still just ridiculous trades. These teams refuse to let overtime end. Everybody on the cart. It's just Moopy now, though, for Revival, and when he rolls away, when he gets taken down, there'll be nothing left contesting, but Moopy has yet to die. Finally, he'll get knocked off one by one. Aspire walks forward in desperation to keep it alive for Revival, but Malibu, they whittle down the enemy members. A Lucio's not enough. A Genji's not enough. The stall is not enough for Revival. Eventually, they'll be put to bed, and Malibu will tie us up.
What theatrics there at the end from both Malibu and the Revival. One of the longest stalls I have seen in quite some time. I mean, if you're one pick away from perhaps closing that map out, but just you hate to be in that position, right, Paul? You need to be in a position where you actually are able to complete the fight earlier with your resources, and it's crazy. It looks cool. But for Revival, a return to form that I did not expect from Malibu, to be quite honest, after seeing point number 1. And they put their head down, keep the fight going, and close out the map eventually. So we are tied up 1-1 here in our series.
Feel comfortable on defense, right? Like Revival, it felt like they were a little bit more gifted some fights on their own defense, but when Malibu hit the defending side, they did a really good job of slowing everything.
It's certainly, I think, something to keep keep throughout the remainder of the series. Keep your eye out on that. If the pressure, because I think the one thing that Revival is doing that kind of cost them that map is that they're throwing good ultimates after a bad fight. And we talked about resource management earlier in the series, and I think that's going to be key throughout the remainder of it, because so far, I think Revival putting themselves in a position they didn't need to be in a couple of those engagements, especially on third, when I mean, they lost the fight and they still threw a Bob in at the very end. Things that need to be cleaned up if they want to take the series.
Well, we're going to catch our breaths here on broadcast and let the teams take a quick break too. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with at least 2 more maps of this series in just a minute. Welcome back, everybody, to North America Contenders Trials for the month of August. We are 1-1, all tied up between Revival and Malibu right now. And thankfully, if you haven't tuned into, I don't know, like EU Trials early this morning, you might not know, but it's no longer first to two here. So we got at least 2 more maps to go, as it is now first to 3, that full-length series for Contenders Trials. Once again, it's Possible and LaFawn. I'm liking how close it is between these two teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, we walked into this series with the expectations that Revival was the team on top, right? They were the team with the advantage in sort of the matchup. And really, I think looking at the roster, I think when we look at the compositions that were run with the Genji, especially because the fact that Genji is so strong right now for probably just the remainder of Trials, and in back, I think playing off Webb's Genji was perhaps the move that Revival needed to make. Sure. Round number 1 kind of played that way, right? Looking at Oasis, it was very much dominant by Revival. Heading to map number 2, though, we started to see Malibu step up, shape up in terms of their resource management, which I think is really key when we get to the double shield mirror, rather than having the dive composition look up against the double shield. When that came through, Malibu just much more patience, much more stability in their front line, and were able to close out the map. And then obviously the ridiculous stall at the very end of Junkertown led us here to Temple of Anubis, where we are tied 1-1 in the series.
Well, and when we set up between these two teams that Revival should quote unquote be the favorites, there is a little bit of an asterisk there, right? Where there might be some recency bias, because Revival, they won Open Division, right? They looked really good winning Open Division 2. And Malibu recently didn't do so hot in full Contenders, right? They got 2-0'd and then 2-0'd again in that bracket play. But make no mistake, these teams are making it as close as can be right now. I love overtime fights, but man, my lungs don't so much. So let's see if either of these teams can pull ahead firmly as the doors open on Anubis.
Looking at this, it's again the mirror composition, right? We saw how Malibu's advantage there. Getting in for free, actually, basically. The Dynamite was not in time, so only 10% for Aspire. That's not really the advantage that you expect, because usually you get a good combo off that halt, but good respect from Malibu.
Now Malibu, they're going to work their way through the arch, through the room, toward the side with the Mega Health Pack. It's slow goings for now. Liar is outpacing Ultraviolet to that Amplification Matrix, and in this first fight, that is so often the fight won unless there is an early pick. But Malibu going to try and break forward out of that choke sooner rather than later. They have to use their own Immortality Field, but Revival are forced off the high ground and back to point, and Wub overstays his welcome. Now the Gravitic Flux comes out. Odd will get taken down mid-air, I believe, so it's not a clean first fight here for Malibu yet.
Oh man, you could see the HP of Mubi go down to sub 10 at one point. He's gonna survive. Rally gonna be committed.
Malibu all investing in this fight. They throw Aspire throws the Bob out to keep Malibu at bay. Ultraviolet's use that Immortality Field too, and Buck will get finished off there. A Bob from Wannabe, not the entry that Malibu were hoping for, and now they just have to back up a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing that I think happens, I mean, it's just a long-standing fight that never fully resets, and Ultimate's used on cooldown essentially as they come back in, and now we're looking at this next fight. Salty, good haul, but he stays alive. What is the advantage now? Suhidro ahead on Supercharger. This is the opening that is needed for Malibu.
Supercharged Blade, here we go, Buck. He's got to get some things done, and Immortality Field seems to be keeping him at bay, and he's stuck in the room, bashed up too, and Wub will be the only Genji who gets his sword out and damaging the enemy team, putting away Malibu.
Cutting through armor, man, it's tough to do, even with the Supercharger. Briggs Rally still a very good ultimate. Aspen keeping her team alive, and Revival hold yet again. Now you're hoping, if you're Malibu, for basically the combo that Revival used on you first fight, but you're walking the Amplification Matrix. Oh boy, I want to be.
Ooh, yep. There's already one down. Immortality Field used too. And now we got this awkward position. Okay, good work there from Malibu. They don't want to get stuck in the side over there, so they just go for a quick retreat.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the fight where you're gonna want to use Malibu wants to use the combo that Revival used in the opening, where it's the the Amplification Matrix into the Gravitic Flux and kill everyone while they're in the air, or get someone while they're in the air. But you're walking to a Gravitic Flux Supercharger, and I mean, that's a little bit better. You can position that wherever you want. Revival also control the high ground, and with only 60 seconds remaining, this is looking very healthy for Revival.
You need an opening pick off this amplification matrix, and it doesn't seem that, or Malibu rather, are going to be gifted that. Instead, everything's going to get thrown at them. All 3 ultimates that Revival had ready, just chucked on top of Malibu there.
Last fight for Malibu, and I mean, they still haven't gotten into a position where they can use the Gravitic Flux. This is the fight to do it, though. There's nothing to really defend. There's nothing really to, hold space for Revival. And now, eyes on Revival here. Keep an eye on Aspire especially, who's down below. You can see Wub and Aspire looking to get an instant kill on the entry.
Wub being a little cheeky there. He'll get himself some nice ult charge and work up to his blade. But it might be too little too late for that one. Now Wub is the only real person who's going to be able to keep this going for Revival. Pulls out the blade, finds Ultraviolet. That's a great start, and it's going to be a pretty dang good finish too. Already the damage is done. Bob is on the objective, will get up to 1 tick, but Buck ever so low was never going to be able to win that fight. Fishcake has the rally and should be able to take that 1v1 against Wub. So now it's just Aspire left. Probably just going to go for some stall, or he can just clean this up. One more shot would put to bed Wannabe. Just the flick there. Aspire will shut him down. Stragglers coming on in for both teams. Immortality Field now down on the objective so that Ultraviolet can try to keep this contest going. Once again, LaFon is looking like a crazy overtime fight.
This one's going to be a little less protracted, though, as everyone just dives into a Bob, and Bob doesn't miss. At least not at that range he doesn't, and that's going to be the hold for Revival. Some progress gained, though, so not a shutout in its entirety. Just over 3/4 of the point. As round 1 completes, as Revival now head to their attack. And I think the difference maker we can kind of see on this point is if we're going to see in that first fight, Revival obviously getting the advantage with the healing, with Liar's Amplification Matrix. If that comes in clutch yet again, if they're able to get that online first, Revival could be looking at a very first fight take here on Temple of Anubis. We'll have to.
You're going to need an even fuller hold here for Malibu. Their defense was pretty good on Junkertown. I would say better than Revival's defense, but the thing is, you can hardly say that Escort and 2CP played the same, LaFon.
That is absolutely the case, and I mean it's also a different case in terms of map geometry, right? This is you're no longer playing with a win condition of a full map. You're playing with a win condition of 85%, right? That's a big difference in terms of how you approach every fight. You don't, Malibu no longer has the space to kind of make mistakes. A mistake means the map is over. So you gotta certainly look at that when you're approaching in terms of the composition, in terms of how you take this fight. Early ult charge trying to be gained from Wannabe and from Buck as they try and poke up through the spawn with the shield for Odd, but nothing gained. 17% for Wannabe, not bad.
Afraid my feed went deep fried for a second here, so if you could cover for me, LaFon, while I fix that one.
Well, Wub's gonna need someone to cover for him as he's taken out instantly off the back of the Dynamite, and Citro closing in. They're gonna go for Malibu as they try to get the remainder of the kills, and that's the first fight that you absolutely needed if you are Malibu. Clean, committed, and aggressive to start to build up, those key resources. Again, though, Ultraviolet not really getting the full value that he needs. Liar significantly ahead in first fight, and walking back in, I mean, Revival, they just have the advantage in this fight.
Liar is going to have that amplification matrix too. He just pops it immediately in the choke. Immortality Field, a halt to drag back Malibu as they try to retreat away. Fishcake's not going to get away. Instead, he'll just be deep fried himself. Odd going down. This is going to be a quick take for Revival. There's not much hope here for Malibu. Amplification matrix will at least help Wannabe take out Aspire, and maybe that was just a well-placed headshot, but now Revival has full control of the objective. Dominion over the point. A desperate stall coming in from the supports. Immortality Field to lengthen that one out, but this is not going to be as crazy of an overtime fight as we've seen on the last 2 maps. Instead, Revival are just going to clean this one on up and put themselves on match.
Something really amusing about Salby staring down Ultraviolet there with the amplification matrix up, shielded his face, and then when the shield breaks, uses his kinetic grasp to deny the damage coming in, and says, what are you going to do? This map's over. And again, I mean, Liar, just the key difference maker there. The first fight amplification matrix means, and without any counter support ultimate coming through, without any counter defensive ability coming through, it's going to be a first fight win easily for Revival and seed the map. So we are up 2-1 for Revival. Back-to-back, you know, map 1 was dominant, map 3 was dominant, map 2 a bit of a question mark as Revival try to close out the series here in map number 4.
Map number 4 is going to be Blizzard World, right? So as we move on to this map, realistically, I think based on what we've seen, I don't think either of these teams are going to change much up, right? You know, the only real variation we've seen across any of these maps was when Buck wanted to go for the Doomfist or Malibu wanted to go for the full dive. I don't really think that Blizzard World lends itself particularly well to that style. So most likely just going to see that double shield mirror once again.
Yeah, I'd say the only composition that you would consider if there was a dive would be the Wrecking Ball focused composition, but we haven't seen NA really pull much of that out at all. So no. I would not be surprised to go to the double shield mirror yet again, the Ashe Genji poke. And I think the one difference is if you look at compositionally how these teams are willing to play. Malibu has tried to play around Buck just a little bit more, I think, in terms of how they're focusing resources, right? Buck seems to be the one closer to Dragonblade, faster to the Dragonblade. It's not just the fact that he's hitting more shots or something like that. It's also how Malibu are approaching fights, right? It's almost always a 5-man stack with Buck on an off angle, and then you're looking at the Genji trying to farm from the side. Meanwhile, on Revival's side, they're a little bit more spread out. They're playing the Ashe Genji sort of opposite to each other, and so you're sharing the damage between the two, and that's one of the reasons why WUB is behind a little bit in generation, but I think it's been a little bit more effective, at least in the maps that have more flank potential, such as Control and Assault.
And I don't think Buck has necessarily been slouched, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, you know, not just in alt charge generation, which obviously you were just saying he's outpacing WUB more often than not, right? But I feel like the positioning on Buck's blades has still been fairly well. The thing is, Aspen and honestly, Moopy to an extent have just been shutting him down so effectively.
Right, and keep in mind the way teams play around Dragonblade, both your own Dragonblade and the opposing Dragonblade, is it's sort of a game as to which it's almost like the Genji is the one sort of caught between two people fighting over him, right? So it's on one side you have, all right, we want to deny the stuns, we want to like make sure there's no shield bash or immortality field, give him the supercharge, try and get as much damage throughput as possible. Where the other one's like, well, that sounds like ridiculousness. We want to make sure he's dead. So we're seeing a little bit of a tug of war, essentially. WUB has not really been given nearly as many resources as Buck has, and that is one of the reasons why we're seeing more flashy Dragonblade kills from Buck.
Gonna have to be more than just flashy on map 4, though. You're gonna have to be good. WUB, again, look at this sneaky position. Just waiting for a beautiful halt dash combo as Malibu try to go forward. Moopy setting him up. Only one in that, though. So instead, WUB's actually gonna go off and try to refocus onto Wannabe. Gets a little bit of alt charge off that. Oh, Buck is in the back, though. He's got Aspire dead to rights, and he'll finish that one off, too. Now, this should be an easy, slow fight win for Malibu. They're going to push forward pretty aggressively, though. Force out that immortality field. Now there's just nothing left for Revival to hold on to the objective with. No fortifies, no kinetic grasp, no players for Revival. They're going to get cleaned up nice and swift.
I mean, that's a perfect example, actually, of what I was talking about at the opening of the map in terms of the differential of setup, right? We saw that Aspire and WUB were playing that off angle from each other, right? We stalled out the halt combo, wasn't very effective, and what that meant was, because it's a 5-stack and 1 from Buck, the 5-stack just walked into the remaining 4 members that were on the point, and then that allowed Buck the space to go and take the 1v1 with Aspire, which obviously Aspire was not expecting, is how easily he was taken down. And that put, you know, a heavy advantage now to Malibu. So credit to them for adapting their strategy mid-game to kind of isolate the one target that they can kind of see and take the 1v1 with.
Well, and Aspire now playing much more with his team. That might come to bite him as the Amplification Matrix comes on out. Already Moopy's gone. That's not a good start for Revival. And Wub, are you going to try and go for the clutch with this Blade? Or are you going to wait for the next fight, give up a lot of cart progress to do so? He sees Buck low after he gets some headshots, but not quite able to find the dash, and a slow roll forward for Malibu. Now going to hasten in its tempo. Liar already gone, that Gravitic Flux coming out, and Wub's not able to do anything to stop it. Just gonna get shut down by Wannabe, and this payload has not even been touched by Revival on point B.
Yeah, with that non-fight from Revival, not only are they going to give up point B uncontested, but they're going to be in point C with the lack of resources to deal with this Blade Supercharger combo that Malibu has shown, right? You don't have Rally online. That's not going to be in time. And I mean, the sustain that's going to be available here for Malibu is massive. You're looking at a likely closeout, I think, of this map with about 3 minutes remaining under best case scenarios for Malibu. They're going to win this next fight, I think, pretty handily, lose the next one, and then come back to the fight after, third fight from now, and close out the map.
Ooh, odd. Getting so Gravitic Flux. Buck's going to go in and try to punish the enemy team for that kill, but he's just going to get punished himself. It is a better trade in numbers here for Malibu, though, so they're going to keep that cart moving forward. Okay, maybe not too much longer. Supercharger is going to expire. Now Cedro's playing a little bit with fire with his position. No shield available. Still want to keep this cart moving as forward as you can, though, with no tanks to contest. The tanks just coming back now for Revival. That's still a good bit of progress for Malibu. There's a full recontest now for Revival. They're going to go on forward. Moopy gonna get halted there, has to retreat to his team, but Aspen with the rally is able to keep Revival in, and now we finally have a full, decisive fight win as Revival gonna walk this one home.
Fights 1 and 2, but because they were so close to each other, right? I mean, fight one went to Malibu, fight 2 went to Revival. The only difference is because Malibu was not nearly as consistent in their resource management as they should have been, they're actually not going to win fight 3, or at least if they do, it's going to be very, very difficult. You're looking at that Supercharger Blade now from the defense with the only thing blocking it, the Immortality field here now from Ultraviolet. So that's now the difficulty. Just pipe the Amplification Matrix away. That's just time bought. But, I mean, you need to start pressuring. Malibu needs to start pressuring Revival out a little bit more here.
Well, there's an Amplification Matrix. That's a lot of pressure, but not as much pressure as the Blade. Warp cleans through everybody there. 4K to his name in a fight 1 easily.
The question I have here, though, for Malibu is why did you commit to that fight? You knew the Dragon Blade combo was online, right? You knew you were going to lose that fight, and there was no way, with how slowly you were playing, that you were going to get in position to pressure Wub out, right? So now, I mean, you are not in a good position. You have the Gravitic Flux, but you have nothing else to defend with. And defensive advantage now to Revival. They have the high ground.
Well, the Bob's at the ready. Halt to set it up. That's a lot of damage already in an Immortality field force. Aspen is gone, though. Player advantage going over to Malibu. So now you need to be a little bit careful here if you're Revival. Salty, this position's not careful at all. That was so far from the rest of his team. Now Wub is going to take that same spot and say, you know what? I like where Salty died. I'm going to go join him.
Well, I mean, and worse even for, or best for Malibu is that they use nothing for that. It's actually the defense who uses the ultimate to lose the fight. So rescue to respawn for Revival, and now in last fight here on this point.
Gravitic Fluxes, both going out from each team, but Buck has a Blade to back it up. He'll get one in Revival. No! Oh, they don't touch the point. Oh. Well,
I mean, okay, in fairness, it wasn't technically a C9.
I mean,
Malibu had the better number.
Close.
Malibu did have the better numbers, and they technically won the fight, so it's not really a C9.
It was 3 for 3 at the end there.
Yeah, but the better health pools were on Malibu's side, so...
Yeah, but the better respawns for Revival, you could make the argument, especially with how a lot of these overtime fights have gone.
That's true, too.
Revival could have brought it back.
You know what? I like the concept of having that lever pulled yet again, just the C9 lever. So we'll call it a C9.
Somebody exclamation point Krong, right? That's what Like Day has on his stream, I think. Yeah. All right. Well, not the best end to that for Revival. Their defense, all in all, rather
Pedestrian?
Yeah, we'll go with that word. It's probably nicer than the ones I was going to dance around, but realistically, a 2-minute 34-second time bank on attack for Blizzard World, that's pretty dang good.
Counterpoint, Revival did not defend the second point at all. So about 3 minutes were taken off the defense on third, which, not bad.
It's certainly not bad for third point, but, you know, if they actually took a fight on second, they probably could have had even less time in the bank. Now you're going to have to take a lot of fights, though. Revival coming out on the attack. They've got to at least cap with time to extend this map and avoid going to a map 5 a little longer.
Bit of a Jekyll and Hyde scenario, though, from Revival, right? Their defense on Temple of Noob is so much better than the offering on Blizzard World. But Wub looking for that poke damage. He's looking to see if he can assassinate either Wannabe or his counterpart Genji, but nothing found.
Wub pretty low, too. Yeah, he'll get finished off by that Dynamite. And once Wub is gone and your Immortality Field is forced, Revival, they just got to slow walk this one back. They'll try and get some damage on with a nice halt there at the end, but fact of the matter is that just keeps Malibu in this fight and gives them a chance to clean you up even better.
I mean, looking at this, the only person on Revival who really was in that fight was Liar, who's going to have his amplification matrix here for this next fight. But look at how rich Malibu is going to be as the next fight commences, right? You're going to have Blade, you're going to have Bob. Obviously, the amplification matrix is online. Realistically, the only one on Revival who outpaced his counterpart is Salty, so.
Well, Liar technically did, but it didn't end up mattering because the time just ticked over for Ultraviolet, right?
I mean, at a certain point, you gotta say they were about the same, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, it was close enough. There's that halt going forward, didn't seem to catch much of anything. Now a halt's coming back, and oh man, it's devastating for Revival. Only the amplification matrix used by the defense to clean this fight up. A cheap fight. Ultraviolet can be back to that ult pretty dang quick, and Revival, that's another minute off their time.
The one saving grace is they're going to prevent Odd from having the Gravitic Flux to start the fight, right? But, I mean, the way Malibu plays, they don't usually start fights with Gravitic Flux anyway, so it's a moot point, relatively speaking. This next fight is going to be the big bang, so to speak. There's going to be 6 ultimates from Revival. There's going to be close enough to that for Malibu. It's all about execution here. But, I mean, Malibu has the advantage, the high ground and the flanks.
Ooh, Odd is going to be able to pull that kinetic grasp, so he'll get back to the objective. Wannabe's just waiting, too, for the nasty flank. Bob's going to go out. Blade is there, too. Buck looking to clean this up. Only Salty goes down, though. Not the ideal Blade there from Buck. He got kited mostly, and Wub is finding value in the back. It's a crappy fight, but a rally keeping Aspen and her team in and on the objective. Good work there from Aspen with Fishcake going down early, not able to mirror that Malibu. They're going to actually have to give this point or go for a last-second stall.
A good, I think they give this point up. They're not going to have anyone in time to contest. The thing there that happens is that Revival choose to commit to the point, right? They use the rally, they use the Gravitic Flux. They're the ones who press Q first. Despite the DPS ultimates coming out from Buck and Wannabe, it's the fact that Revival commits to the fight with the support ultimates, with the sustain, and I think the sustain there is what gets them through it. Obviously, now in this next one, though, you're going to have the Supercharger Blade combo. Can he dodge the Gravitic Flux?
Oh, Buck need to actually stay alive for it. Okay, or not Buck, rather, Wub. Buck was the one trying to take out Wub before he could Blade. And that Gravitic Flux from Odd could shut down Wub in his Dragon Blade. Right now, Revival just playing it slow. They know that Malibu aren't going to walk forward without having to use something like the Rally. Now the Blade is out, into the back. Does get caught in that Gravitic Flux too, so Wub's not going to be able to find anything. Malibu just walk over Revival there, and now they're going to get a defense on second that Revival never had the chance.
That's the Gravitic Flux used to deny the, well, actually, it's the Gravitic Flux and the Rally that are denying the Supercharger Blade, right? The armor lasts just long enough to prevent Wub from getting the dash slash to reset through the team with the Supercharger damage amp, right? So then that buys time for Odd to get the Gravitic Flux off, and once you're in the air, deflect or not, Genji is very squishy. So, reset there. This is looking really bad now for Revival.
Oh, no pillar is too thin. No pillar is too thin. Hide behind it. Oh, okay. It's too thin for Moopy and Liar. They're going to get cleaned up, taken down. Easy work there for Malibu and more time off the clock. There's no chance that Revival can now match the time of Malibu.
There's a real scenario. They don't even cap second with the if you look at the rotation that's coming in here now from the offense. High ground is so hard to break that once you have control of it, it requires basically a dump of ultimates to get in, and you're not even gonna let them get to high ground.
Yeah, Bucks is just going to pull out the... I almost want to call this a BM blade. Bro, they're so close to their spawn right now. You really got to do it to them. Oh, please go for the spawn hold, Malibu. Please go for the spawn hold. I think they are. Oh, no. They absolutely are, LaFon.
Okay. Okay. What do you use to get out of spawn now? What ultimate? Which ultimate are you going to commit? Is it the rally? That means you're going to lose the fight on point. Are you going to use a damage amplification one? Or are you going to use the Dragon Blade?
Bob already going forward. Buck will be forced back. But he can just wrap himself around and stay in this fight. Aspire throws out the Bob, and yeah, you're going to get out of your own spawn now with a minute remaining. And the Gravitic Flux was used by Odd, but ultimately, Revival, you can't be feeling good right now. At least you'll have the Gravitic Flux and a Blade to finish this, but you got so long to go.
3 ults to get out of spawn, Paul. The Rally, the Amplification Matrix, and the Bob. You hate to see it if you're a Revival fan. And I mean, there is very much a high ground recontest available here now for the defense. Malibu is not out of this yet. The cart is going to get one more final fight here on third, and the Rally is available now for Fishcake. I mean, you gotta like the chances here now for Malibu as they commit to this last point.
Nice Gravitic Flux halt combination there, but Aspire's already gone.
Wait, they don't!
Oh no! What C9 deserves another, apparently, says Malibu, as they will not touch the objective. So despite the fact that they probably could have won that fight and are winning this fight, there's more time in the bank now for Revival.
That one is a letter number. That is objectively a letter number. Credit to Revival for zoning out the point. The Aspire, despite going down first, actually uses the Dynamite to get value and push people off the objective.
Look at this! Look at this mess, LaFon! This is backwards! Malibu, you gotta get to the objective. Your defense is on the other side. Okay, they'll get onto the cart. They'll get control. They'll wrap their way back around. This is fine. Malibu, minute left for Revival. They can still hold them.
I mean, high ground 2 OP there, but the one question now I have for a Revival is, are you closing? Oh no, you can't keep getting away with this.
Yes, Buck absolutely can keep getting away with this. Ooh, not away with this position necessarily. Amplification Matrix gonna go out. Once again, Revival gonna try and walk the cart forward, and great stun on a Buck there at the end of his deflect. He's not able to keep that contest going. Now the rest of Malibu have to jump down into the waiting arms of Revival, who will finish them off, but we're down to 18 seconds, LaFon. Revival needed to cap with time to avoid a map 5. Now, best case scenario, they finish and draw.
There's the high ground contest. It doesn't matter if they win or lose. That's not the point of it, right? It's all about wasting time. And it did that masterfully. Like, quite frankly, Malibu should win this next fight. They have everything they need to close it out. Rally, Blade, Gravitic Flux. Hey, you can get a Flux 9 here on the point.
Wanna be behind too. Waiting for the Bob, doesn't get spot. There goes the Bob into the back line. One out with the Blade, actually getting the better work done as Buck seems to have been neutralized, and Bob is in the back. Sure, he's a bit of a nuisance, and that's pretty much it. He'll leave too, and Revival, they're not quite done yet. They have a chance to draw this map for fun.
We are going to a map 5. That much is certain.
Yes.
The question is, how do we get there? Is it with Revival still at match point and Malibu still fighting for their lives? Or will we go even? And then map 5 be the last map for sure. This is entirely possible for Revival to hold. This is not out of like 2 minutes 34 seconds. Like, this is not a crazy time bank to kind of deny. As long as that first fight is consistent for Revival and they build up their resources fast and sort of deny, you know, Malibu on the entry, we're still looking at a full hold. It's not out of the question at all.
As long as we don't get another... I don't think I can take 3 in a map. I'm just
1.5 so far. 1.5 so far. We'll call the first one a half C9. A C 4.5?
A C 4.5, a lowercase c too.
Yeah, they're
Lowercase
yeah,
c
of course.
4.5. All right. Well, fact of the matter is, Revival, they need to plant themselves on the objective, take up roots essentially, because if they give even a tick over to Malibu, map 5 is not going to be advantageous for them. It's just going to be straight out even whoever wins.
Nothing changing on the defense. And nothing changing the offense. We're going to get the mirror composition yet again. Why break what's working, right?
And it's worth noting that Malibu, part of the reason they had such a great time bank was because of a very early pick from Buck. You have to imagine Aspire is going to be a little bit more careful, play with cards a little bit closer to the chest, and not get taken down so early.
Yeah. Aspen playing bodyguard there to Aspire. You can see it through the outline. The break, putting the shield up for the Ashe.
Good help there, too. A lot of damage there, but Revival are going to have to back onto the objective regardless. Ultraviolet outpacing to the amplification matrix, but only by a little. Aggressive push forward there from Malibu. They're going to use their immortality field to keep that one going, but what do they have once that's gone? Amplification matrix is the answer, so Revival still have to play back, but the position on that amplification matrix doesn't give you control of the objective here if you are Malibu. So now you got to kind of wrap yourselves around, try and give Wannabe the flank in the backline, demolish Aspen, but trade it 1-for-1. Wannabe does have a nice angle here into the back, but with Bob on the point, it's still the fight going over to Revival, and only 1 minute and 25 seconds left for Malibu.
Whew. Okay. It comes down to this. There is a very even fight here on the last fight of the map. These teams are matched evenly. It's going to come down to execution. And, I mean, you have to give advantage to the high ground of the defense first. You have the natural choke control. You're going to have, you know, the ability to set the halt up for the flux early. But,
60 seconds.
I mean, as long as you can get Wannabe in a position yet again for that crossfire, looking pretty good. I'd say even again, yet again for that. Malibu, perhaps a little bit more space to work with Bob.
Well, I'm going to have that played first, though. Gravitic Flux coming out already. Immortality Field forced as such. But Immortality Field was used by Liar, and now there's nothing for the Gravitic Flux. So much damage coming through, and Buck's got a blade of his own. This will be the match going over to Malibu. They'll polish off point A yet again. And with 25 seconds remaining, we'll send this to a map 5 all tied up.
Man, it's good to be back to the first of 3 formats. So we get this fifth map in the play. Oh, it was just close. I was kind of looking through the fight, like sort of setting the fight up in my head in that last engagement, saying, how would I want to engage with this? Like, what would I want to see if I was Malibu, and what was their setup? And their setup is, I think, the sort of the ideal condition is force the Gravitic Flux early with enough pressure that you're also forcing the Immortality Field. Set the Bob up as the flank, and then try and make a rotation to get like sort of a crossfire. Have Bob be the linchpin of sort of that equation. And the fact that it was that Wannabe did not have to use it in the first fight of the second go around, I think speaks a lot for why that was able to work. And it basically works out that way, right? You get the Bob to point, you get the Gravitic Flux early out of the defense, and you're able to sustain through it. Then all of a sudden, things start to pressure in your way, and as you highlighted, without Immortality Field, Blade becomes a lot easier to execute on.
Yeah, great work there from Malibu, ultimately. I mean, their first push looked a little bit rough there, but you can see the discipline, the patience, the tug of war that Malibu play with on these kind of maps, where they just look for resources, right? Where they're allotted a little bit more time so they can use that time to their advantage and force mistakes out of the enemy team. The problem now for Malibu is that we go back to Control. It'll be Ilios to round this series out. And when we were on Control earlier, it went pretty easily over to Revival. They took it hand in hand. And I was saying Malibu, they like to play with time. You don't get a lot of time on Control. You act or you lose.
Yes, I think, is where you show how we got here so far with our map sets. It's been back and forth the whole way, actually.
It really has been.
And I would say that the maps that Revival won were not close, right? We see the 1-0 there for Temple of Anubis, whereas and the 2-0 for our first map of Oasis. But the maps where Revival lose, it's a lot closer, right? So you have
Sure.
to kind of take that into account as well. That when Malibu wins, they're playing their opponent very close. When they're not in a map, though, they're not in that map, and that's something to keep an eye on beyond this series, right? Because I think Revival and Malibu, as evidenced by sort of how they've positioned, is that they're very close to each other. I'd say these teams are about the same power level, so to speak. But beyond just this match, that's definitely something that for Malibu is that a problem that they have to deal with in future matchups.
You called it Jekyll and Hyde earlier. Both teams going to be needing more so muscle on this last map, as this is how you start your Contenders Trials run, and this determines whether you hit OD, stay in Trials, or go up to Contenders Actual. Not much changing as we hit on to Ruins for this first map. Wannabe and Aspire, though, both rocking the Widowmakers. Picks coming out potentially, and Wannabe's already found the first one.
That was the halt. Liar gets yanked out of position, not really his fault. And that's going to be the main support down. Ooh, Wannabe knows, but can't go for the kill.
He doesn't really need to go for this kill, though. He can just play on the objective, or he could have a minute ago. Buck now goes down. The point still goes over to Malibu, though, so you can still play this a little bit slower if you are Wannabe. More quickly paced now, as with Salty going down, you have the advantage. You want to press that while that shield, that kinetic grasp isn't up, and with Wannabe finding that pick onto Aspire, there's not much left to bring Revival back into this fight. Wub will get the one pick, though, but hard to imagine he gets the second one after.
No, and with this, man, Revival are trying to force this fight. They want this.
Aspire's gonna get the better end of this trade, though. Wannabe finds himself in the grave first, and then it's just one by one, slowly Revival getting back onto the objective, and without having to use ultimates, too.
Who called winnable in that fight? Because I think it was Aspen. I think it was Aspen, because Aspen used the rally and then jumped forward at like half HP. There was something there that Revival saw that they had advantage, and the call to go forward was well timed. Credit to whoever made that call, because it was one that the team followed up on, and they take the fight and realistically stop a snowball. There's the amplification matrix. Force the rally out early. There's going to be no defense for this blade here against Wub.
Well, and, you know, this rally is pushing you to the objective, but you're split up. This rally armor hasn't stacked ideally. Buck going forward with the blade, but not much to protect him. He'll take out the supercharger, but that's not necessarily worth it. He's going to fall himself. Moopy going down, though. It's hard for you to stick on the objective if you're Revival right now, and even harder as Wannabe just finds so many headshots. Bruh, does he miss is the question. The answer is, I mean, occasionally, but not nearly enough for Revival to hold on.
There's going to be the stall there from Moopy. They're going to get 50%, not much more. And you know, we were saying that Buck's blade did not really have value. You got to be honest that Wubs wasn't that great either. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, when Wannabe pops off like that, you need someone to counter pick against it. With the Spire going down, there's just no, there's no way to do so. So I mean, now in a really tough position. Oh, Spire. He's fine.
He's fine.
He's fine.
Not even close. Don't even
voice crack though, as he says he's fine.
20 health is 19 more than Aspire needed. Now Salty needs to find value with this Gravitic Flux. Fishcake goes down. That's a great start for Revival as they can push forward now. Immortality Field gone too. So not a too difficult of a fight there for Revival. They only use that Gravitic Flux, I believe, and you're going to get the point to boot. So good work there. Still 85% though coming in for Malibu.
That's actually happened throughout the series is that even when we call a fight as being won by a Revival, there's always some theatrics from Wannabe and Buck, right? They always step in and be like, is it though? And they're like, yes, it is. They're like, okay. But I think that's something that if you're a Revival, you have to just kind of like remove. You can't be losing players in a fight because we've seen what that turns into. It's these stalled out overtime fights that really don't go in your favor. So it's a tough place to be. Rally online though for the defense, so they should be okay here in this next game.
Blade alive too. Wub immediately gonna pop that and just pressure in this room. Go for the cleaves and deal so much damage. There's no way you can get away from that. If you're not stunning, halting, stopping Wub, he's gonna clean your team.
Yep. The respect Wub shows from to Wannabe, even at 300 HP, is impressive. Last fight territory here. Who's gonna be the one to touch?
Looks like it's going to be Ultraviolet swapping over onto the Lucio, and Cedro on the Wrecking Ball too. This is good. They'll be able to trigger overtime, but Odd needs a miracle with this gravitic flux, and it seems like not too much has come out. At least damage done. Buck can clean up with the blade. He's got so much work done already, and just barely Malibu will hold on to this and look for last fight themselves.
Yes. And now we're asking who's on the retake for, well, who's going to touch for revival? It's probably Salty here, I would imagine. Oh man, this is tough. You don't have anything beyond the amplification matrix, and this comp does not work well around it. Overtime is triggered, but Salty's going to go down here.
Salty's hanging on to life by a thread. He'll get healed too. Now that amplification matrix is down, but who's there to actually benefit from it? Nobody. No one can actually pressure Malibu right now through that amp matrix, and that's all you had, Revival. So 99 to 99, it's a close fight yet again. But this time on Control, unlike map number 1, seems like it's going to be Malibu walking away with a 1-0 lead.
And it's a reversal of fortunes in terms of the hit scan play. Wannabe steps up big time. And I think 2 fights there were off the back of Wannabe just getting the clear, uncontested pickoff that just was never applied. And so, you know, you head to this, and now it's Malibu up 1-0 on Control, and all of a sudden, it's looking like Malibu are finally on the front foot. They're looking like they have to reverse to complete the 5 map here and break the streak of the 1-1-1-1.
Oh boy. We go over to Well, one of the most tumultuous maps in the game of Overwatch, I feel like, you know, with that giant pit in the middle for environmental kills. If you're not careful, it's not going to go well. And we get a switch up here from both teams. Buck going over back to his signature Doomfist, whereas Revival want to go for the dive.
I mean, we've seen this composition a lot in China, right, in APAC, and we've seen how well it can execute on. But if it takes too long, this comp could fail hard as well.
You need to find a pick here, Revival. Good anti coming through, forcing Malibu into a room that they can't find much value from, but they find enough. Aspen will go down as the collapse attempted to come in from Revival. This is a bit of an awkward position for Malibu now as they've wrapped around to the enemy team's side, and this flank coming in, the crossfire, is pretty devastating. Aspire will get Seadro. It's a trade for main tanks, but the pressure on the point still goes to Malibu, and with Salty going down too, who's actually there to contest for Revival? What momentarily, but not nearly long enough.
I don't like the Doomfist into the double shield, but you're not playing against double shield here, right? And Buff becomes infinitely more useful against the Winston. Mubi can't really choose his moment to engage. He has to deal with no less than 5 actually, stuns or displacement abilities on the field, right? The only one on the team who doesn't affect him is Ultraviolet. And all of a sudden, Ultraviolet has the immortality field as well. So Salty needs to get up to that high energy, needs to start brawling a little bit in the background, giving space for Mubi to sustain through.
Fire looking for the flick, can't quite find it with the pulse bomb. Nana going forward, goes on to Aspen, interestingly enough. Not a ton of damage coming out of that, but at least some good sustain. She's gonna go down anyways though, and even with the primal coming out from Mubi, not much is being found. Buck is running riot in the backline while Mubi is busy with the rest of Malibu. Revival can't quite seem to get an edge in these fights.
And now, I mean, the question is, do you switch to a different composition, or do you continue, rather, with what you've got? Mubi going over to the Wrecking Ball, okay. It's tough to make the Wrecking Ball work, but if you can, it has a lot more displacement potential mid-fight, right? You're looking at, if Mubi can do well, this is okay for a Revival, but Mubi needs to be able to sustain through the stuns.
Buck in the back. Oh, he whiffs the first, but will find the second and the kill onto Liar. One forward with the blade. He needs so much value, and he'll get his blade dulled. At least Wannabe will go down. Died with the dynamite tick there, I believe. So Revival not quite out of this fight yet, but their health is so low across the board, and a Supercharger keeps them from actually getting onto the objective too well. Finally, the Supercharger will expire. And now the rally is out from Aspen, but we're up to 90-some% here for Malibu. You need a pick now. There's one on the Seadro, but it's traded for Mubi. Not the value you were looking for, and Wannabe with a beautiful headshot shuts one down. Revival, they get the flick necessary, and Wub will get the cleanup. It's not quite done and dusted just yet.
There is the one saving grace here for Revival is that everything was used in that last fight, and now the composition, you know, the compositional ultimates that are coming up on the Malibu side are not very good at dealing with this hyper-mobile kit. Odd, Gravitic Flux, you're not really going to get anything. You need to commit it on one target while your entire team is getting rushed. And Ultraviolet's Amplification Matrix can easily be worked around. So there is still room here for Revival to close this out, but make no mistake, this is a very long road.
Fire, Pulse Bomb at the ready. Forced back by the Amplification Matrix, but that's not the ideal place. And now you get to throw it into that Graviton Surge. Immortality Field is placed around the corner. Surge 2 already gone. That's a quick cleanup for Revival, and they're going to keep this map alive.
A really clean grab from Salty. Actually splits the team in half. 2 people on the inside of Gazebo, the rest on the outside, and you're going to clean those up. Immortality Field can't reach around corners. Oh, Wannabe makes a great switch here on the Torbjorn. Life just got so much more difficult for Moopy, Aspire, and Wub, as their flank potential is now significantly reduced. Oh, this is going to be really tough. I mean, Nanoblade available. This Wub needs to be clutch with this.
Wub needs to actually get up to that blade. Minefield out early, but Moopy's gonna go down. Now, Buck, you got the Nano Blade out. What can you get done with it, buddy? One gone. You're looking for the other support. Both supports gone is a good start. So despite some picks on the edge here from Malibu, it's not a fight one. A Gravitic Flux invested there from Odd, completely whiffed too. I believe it was called winnable, or at least last fightable there from Malibu, but they're gonna want that.
Duos.
Oh, it all comes down to this. Does the map end here, or do we go to a third round? Aspire, Pulse Bomb out, Buck getting away from danger.
Rally.
He's got that blade at the ready. He'll throw it on in, but he needs to find somebody vulnerable. He's just getting kited right now. Aspire on such low health, but she'll stay alive, as will the rest of Revival. Wub goes down. It's not quite over. The flip comes through. Don't C9 this, Revival, please. Ooh, what tech there from Cedro, too. Keeps himself alive, and you can't say the same for Aspen. Tucked into the pit, and Malibu take the win by the skin of their teeth.
How the table turns. You can see Aspen going for the knockoff there on the map, and instead gets sent into the map hazard. Wub's going to get play of the game, but it does not matter. Revival, they're going to take the loss here as Malibu close out the round. Oh, my. Woo. What a series.
What a match, Fawn. Tooth and nail the entire time. The only map that wasn't a close call was Temple of Anubis, and you gotta give it up to Malibu. They fought so hard in this fight, and they executed so well, especially on.
Well, let's see how we got here as the map set comes in. Back and forth the whole way till map number 5. As Malibu close out the series in style. Woo. Honestly, there's no other way for that series to end than the way it did, in just the 9-9 flip at the last moment. And then the overtime pick away so very quickly. Credit to, I mean, yeah, you said it. Credit to Malibu. The adaptation mid-game to kind of reset mentally and take the fight to Revival on their own turf. Malibu continues to, I think, impress in their flexibility in terms of how they approach fights. You know, I mentioned that 5-1 setup they had in the last fight, in the last map was more of a flanking style, evidenced by control, of course, but still an evolution nonetheless. And there's a lot to go into in terms of the mechanical situations that Malibu put Revival in. Ultimately, though, it led to the victory, and Revival just had no answers on Ilios.
Well, Revival aren't out of this yet. They got several matches, another 4 matches, one each day this week. There's still so much North American Contenders trials to go. We're going to have more tomorrow, but we still have more today, actually, not here on this stream. So if you're watching just on this stream, what I need you to do, support tier 2, is go down, click on the Elohel Esports YouTube page, and head over to the other stream. Dor and Moxie are walking you through what is also turning out to be a great match, and make sure you tune in tomorrow, obviously, as we're going to have Malibu back, as well as some other teams that we haven't seen on broadcast. But for now, head over to the other stream, check out more NA Contenders Trials, and support some more tier 2. We'll see you more for this week of Contenders Trials North America.